Mad Carol. Carol wasn't anybody knew. Richard Credit knew her though. Richard was engineered to laugh at women. Women got fingered and shagged in backyards and chucked a few days later. You chucked them when you'd finished with them in the sheds or the flat-packed greenhouses that stood bent in the shit soil all over this backwards fucking goldfish bowl. Women were like the pheasants men would gut in the outhouses at the foot of the fields as 50cc crossbikes screamed down a dirt track that backed on from all the flats. Don't forget the fucking seed patch. It stinks, Dad. Fucking hell. Do you want to eat the cunt or what? Rip the fucking seed patch out. One afternoon, Richard and his mates went up to Carol's and stood around outside smoking. Carol came running out, wielding a butter knife, screaming her head off as she leapt at Richard, but he backed out from her sight line. Carol screamed, "God will stab you! Jehovah will stab you, Richard!" She went for him again, but this time Richard held his right leg up and stamped her hard on the side of her left thigh. Carol crashed onto the road, a road that spread out like the head of a mushroom under the 4 houses that crowned this end of terrace cul-de-sac. Her chin scraped along the tarmac as she fell face first, and the 5 young lads watching fell into momentary shock. It didn't ease up. Richard and the lads stood over her as Carol murmured into the drain cover. Her face was rested on, her body spread-eagled. Carol's murmur kicked the lads into the reality of the situation. The experience was so hard it kind of soundproofed the moment, locking all of the sensation out like an internal panic room they'd been thrown into. All of them shook with dread apart from Richard, who started to laugh unnaturally as Carol slowly got up and, without looking at any of them, walked back into the house, hunched and slow. Richard spotted the butter knife and picked it up. "Oi, sop tits, you forgot this, you fat mad cunt." He threw the knife so hard that when it hit the back of Carol's head, she lurched forward as if she'd tripped on a large step. Carol swung round and bent forward so her head was level with her waist, as if she was going into some kind of advanced hardcore yoga move. She lifted her head slightly to address them and screamed in the most disturbing tone, "I don't know why, I don't know why, I don't know why, I don't know why." Nobody saw this, not anyone who lived on Shelley Close. Nobody saw this. Credit looked to the lads for confirmation as Carol straightened her posture and attempted once more to go back into the house. Richard needed instant confirmation from the lads, confirmation that they too blamed Carol for her own mess state, just like Credit did. But the eyes, all 5 pairs of them, looked at Richard with no such understanding. They too had been abused by his actions, and the point-blank impact of this had only just started nibbling on their minds. But what rings true inside doesn't usually transfer to the lips, and all 5 of them immediately began posting fireworks through Carol's letterboxes, mostly bangers. Carol packed 3 fat dog ends out of the plastic bag that acted as her waste bin. She squeezed the stale strands of tobacco onto the coffee table and then transported them into a large Rizzler. Once rolled, she made a roach from the card on the side of the packet of Rizzlers and inserted it into one of the ends. The first banger exploded almost straight away and it tore through the net curtain that covered the front door. Carol jumped as her arms and chest waded through a series of spasms. A second and third, then 4th and 5th, they pulverised the interior space around the front door. The stairs to the upper part of the house were only a few feet away from the front door and they were covered in large burnt black holes. No fires grew, but her coats hanging on the wall that faced the stairs now looked in part like giant raisins, shriveled and smouldering slightly. She lit the roll-up and slowly walked into the hallway. Visually, it was much like her life anyway, she thought. It didn't do anything to her. It didn't mean a thing to her. The piercing noise from the bangers had stopped, and this was all she was interested in. Richard Credit didn't have a licence. The old plate, however, was enough to stop most coppers from bothering him. He rode it well. Plus the local coppers were mostly thick hicks. The CID slightly more alert, but they were aloof generally, arrogant idiots impressing other thick locals by doing drugs stolen from the lockup and getting pissed in the local pub. Or they would tend to be in the city, handling bigger crimes. Credit would sit right at the back of the seat when riding it around, as if he was about to do some kind of wheelie. He looked good. He suited the scooter. It was a Vespa 125 PX in gloss black. No trimmings, just basic. The fact that he slouched like, say, a biker would on an Harley Davidson, with his arms stretched to maximum capacity, legs wide open on the footstand, kind of made up for any customised accessories that proved popular with the 125s. If you had a 200, you didn't need any fluff because the fucking thing stuck its chest out with bigger side panels, than the 125, and packed full of fucking meat. Owners of the 125 generally carried a subconscious insecurity and would fit the machine out with conversion kits, flashy exhaust muzzles that spat treble heavy sounding splutters and other exterior gimmicks. Credit had a neat side parting haircut too, with the back of his hair gradually blending into his neckline, but his fringe was abnormally long, so it would cover his left eye. The weight of his fringe would ensure his parting was flawless, completely defined. Credit would flick it into shape at the counter of the newsagents or on the high street as he walked. The tip covered the far corner of Carol's backyard, and it mainly consisted of household rubbish and dirty rain-sodden, sun-dried clothes that had been thrown in. It was all hers. The concrete posts that marked the square area that made up her backyard were connected by two pieces of wire that ran through each post and were roughly about a foot apart from each other. The washing line followed suit in its minimalism, a concrete pole mixed in with hardcore that chipped and occasionally fell off on the actual line wire attached to a hook that was nailed into the brick of the house. Richard pressed Carol against the sink and kissed her. She made a few faint noises of pleasure but failed to fall into the moment completely. She wasn't sure if this was even taking place and certainly couldn't even begin to understand the other times it had happened. The way Richard had executed these visits made her think of heavily lit cold blue and white tiles in the chip shop or slaughterhouses bloated with fresh blood perhaps, and as they both leant against the sink unit, Carol imagined their bodies slopped and hung like bits of working iron in an incorrect casing. It wasn't how things should be. Carol looked down mostly throughout the day today. Her view was the ground, like the floor here with Richard, or on the street it would be the concrete, or at the edge of her bed it would be the carpet. The list went on, and not even Jehovah could fix this. What could he fix, she thought? Did he ever fix the holes in his son's hands, or the weather when they all had to walk through the sea? He wouldn't even buy her a new bin. Richard promised to buy her one, though, and she believed him. Carol believed him because she had seen far worse than Richard Credit, and although the horror that attached itself to Richard would always shake her core, she was now Kevlar to its terror and attempted penetration. Fuck off. Carol's place in her life was doomed. If she chose to wear no knickers, it was simply because it was comfortable and a thing nobody thought odd at one time in her life. But this would otherwise destroy her now, in public and in this place. If Carol chose to sing sweet nothings along the cut-through between town and the lanes, then that too would encase her in ridicule. It was the cracker factory that did this to her. It told all the other people about these things. Carol hated the fucking cracker factory. She hated it for telling everybody about her knickers and her singing. She hated it for causing her so much confusing problems. The pallet that she was thrown onto by the other women after being pulled off the line and held down whilst they lifted up her skirt to find out if she had no underwear on. They then shrink-wrapped her to the pallet and wheeled her down the canteen and left her in there for nearly 30 minutes. Her skirt lifted over her chest. Did you see sock tits on that fucking pallet in the canteen? Fucking hell. Fucking no knickers on too. Oh my fucking God. Those cunts she works with in dispatch. Fucking Sharon and Shara and Karen, all that lot. They fucking hate her. Carol remembered the pallet truck that she was wheeled into the canteen on. It was brand new, and she could tell this by the bright white plastic wheels at the back of the truck. She looked into them while scraping her fingernails against the wooden pallet. It was the only part of her body she could move upwards, that and her neck. She didn't make the sound. The pallet's truck wheels were so bright, so formed and new. After Richard left via the back door, Carol walked back into the living room and leant against the front window. She gazed at the red fence that surrounded the playing field further down from the cul-de-sac and remembered how it used to be so high and difficult to climb over as a child. She lit the cigarette Richard had given her and walked out of the house, leaving the door open. She crossed the small road and rested against the red fence, gripping its cold looped iron, centering now on the beige bricks that made up all of the houses on her street and throughout the estate. The oak tree at the park's entrance towered with low winds going through its branches, and she took a while before heading back into the house to look for more dog ends.